Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. France's far-right leader Marine Le Pen has confirmed she will run for president in 2027 after an appeal court cleared the way for her candidacy despite upholding her conviction for embezzling European Parliament funds. Now, the ruling has transformed a legal battle into a political one, reshaping the race less than a year before France heads to the polls, raising fresh questions about whether the far right can win power in the world's seventh largest economy. Joining us now is Emmanuel Dupuy, president of the Institut Prospective at Sécurité on Europe. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. Happy to be on air.
So if we look at what happened from yesterday on Tuesday with this ruling, the conviction, may have surprised some, and also Le Pen's reaction as well. So how do you take, first of all, the court's decision, and secondly, Marine Le Pen's decision to go ahead and run?
Well, the decision was attended and was expected. The judges have decided to confirm the legitimaity of the conviction and the indictment of Marine Le Pen, but giving the choices to the elector. And now it is a political choice and not anymore a judicial choice. Marine Le Pen made it clear that once this decision was made, she would announce she would be candidate. There was no doubt about that. What is now a bit of a surprise is that she will be clearly saying, and she clearly said yesterday night, that she was running as a duo. Jordan Bardella, who will be obviously and evidently a prime minister. So Jordan Bardella, who was maybe expecting himself to candidate, will now have the second role in this campaign. The campaign has been launched. Now we know that 4 candidates have officially announced their candidacy. Marine Le Pen yesterday night, and of course the 3 others who did that during the previous week, Jean-Luc Mélenchon for extreme left, Edouard Philippe, former Prime Minister of Emmanuel Macron, as well as Gabriel Attal, who would be, I quote, the most closer to Emmanuel Macron's legacy. There will be obviously other candidates, but now the quartet is ready to run for the 2027 election.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, you mentioned Mr. Bardella, and I mean, one of the things that yesterday kind of the plan B was that Jordan Bardella, is her young protege lieutenant, 30 years old barely, would take and be that main voice and candidate for Front National. But at the same time, now it's this duo. So I'm just curious, how common is that in French politics? And is this an advantage or a disadvantage ultimately? Will these 2 voices be able to sell the same policy, or will this maybe be something of a challenge?
Well, you can make the comparison with a good cop and bad cop. Jordan Bardella has been on different position, has led and taken different position in European Parliament than Marine Le Pen. For example, he is more sustainable to Ukraine than Marine Le Pen is. His position on the pensions are not as, let's say, rigorous than Marine Le Pen. There's been, therefore, a sort of differences of approach, maybe a generational approach, which Marine Le Pen will take advantage of. It is the first time, you're right, that a duo presents himself, president or vice president, president, prime minister, or the clear assurance that the number 2 will be prime minister. So this is a bit of a challenge, not for French policy, but for the other candidates who haven't yet made that decision and who are running as candidates for the presidential election.
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, the saying goes, 3rd time lucky. In fact, in Marine Le Pen's case, it's actually the 4th time that she's attempting this presidential bid. Will we see, in your mind, the same kind of campaign before? She came very close last time in this runoff. Will this be a different campaign? How do you see this play out for her?
Well, first of all, Rassemblement National has never been so high. And during the last 2 presidential elections, she was lower. And now the month ahead will confirm the fact that for a presidential election, it is the ideology that the voters are seeking for. And thus, that brings National Rally and its potential allies around a national rally. Let's take the most famous or the most current example of Reconquête of Éric Zemmour's party, where is now 40% of the electoral votes. During the last presidential election, 11 million of French voters have voted just for Rassemblement National. So this will not change. And I would maybe think that the judicial feuilleton or the judicial runouts of Marine Le Pen will serve her, because the French like this type of stories of someone who could not have run and who finally will run. And there's a bit of a drama, a bit of a suspense on which Marine Le Pen will publicly play. The other element that we can add is the fact that National Rally is now leaning more and more to a potential handshake with the more conservative or more legitimate liberal centrist, or let's say conservative and liberal party. And there are some inside Les Républicains who are thinking of maybe joining their efforts, or at least dialogue with Marine Le Pen. And this is why you have this time a new agenda with Éric Ciotti, the former president of the Républicains, which is now a political ally of Marine Le Pen. So we may see in the current months a sort of extension to the centrist or to the more liberal conservative political parties in order to win the elections in 2027, because on the other side, the extreme left is going stronger as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a bit more on that in terms of her partners and allies, but maybe beyond France for a moment. I know that Jordan Bardella was just recently touring also in Poland, meeting the opposition here. If we're looking also at that kind of, let's say, spectrum, where does Marine Le Pen stand? Where are her European allies? Where does she stand if we're looking at Germany or Italy and across the board in Europe? Her policies for NATO are a little bit different than some of those partners in Europe.
Well, Jordan Bardella is but the envoy, the special envoy of Marine Le Pen, as he is the chairman of Les Patriotes at the European Parliament, the third political party, the third trans-European political party in the EU Parliament. So there are some allies, you mentioned some of them, Chega in Portugal, Vox in Spain, a bit less Fratelli d'Italia, I would come back to that, a bit more Lega from Matteo Salvini, or the new party which was launched by Vanacci, who now represents more than 120,000 Italian voters who have decided to withdraw their sustain to Giorgia Meloni, or at least keep it on putting a bit more pressure on the right to Giorgia Meloni, and of course AfD, as you mentioned rightly, and of course Poland or Czech Republic. But I mean, the differences between France and the other party in the other countries is that Marine Le Pen is presenting herself in a form of historical legitimacy, saying that she is the one incarnating, which is of course awkward, the strategic autonomy of France, the independence in terms of foreign policy, a very Gaullist position. And this makes it a bit different than the other extreme party around Europe, which are anti or Eurosceptic, which want to go out of Euro, which want to get out of NATO, or at least be a bit more determined to shake the transatlantic partnership. And I have to say that in France, in Marine Le Pen's party, it's not that obvious. So therefore, there's not a sort of normal adherence, if I can put it in French, with the other traditional European politics parties.
Mm-hmm. I want to probe that a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned strategic autonomy there for France, also calling Bardella the special envoy of Le Pen. But also, I mean, if we're looking at defense
in terms of foreign policy.
Yeah, but also in terms of foreign policy and military policy, that's really big right now. There's a lot of focus on that in Europe. It's no getting around that. You mentioned also in terms of Le Pen saying, well, she's about this idea, Gaullist idea. But if we're looking at some of the ideas that already have been discussed and proposed by France, for instance, this potential nuclear sharing by President Macron, also some comments from Bardella saying, well, he actually is in favor of security guarantees for Ukraine. Where does she stand in all this?
Again, Jordan Bardella has been very has had a very more offensive posture, has mentioned that in her policy. Marine Le Pen, no. That does not mean that she's not in accordance. That doesn't mean she's going to ally or rally on that position. Marine Le Pen knows very well that there is a political psychology of the French voters who want and still are engaged in sustaining Ukraine, defending the European continent, and be more or less, and of course, be less dependent to the United States. So strategic autonomy is very Gaullist. I would add that Emmanuel Macron has borrowed that from General de Gaulle. He has not invented that. And so Marine Le Pen is totally, in terms of strategic autonomy, on the same track, on the same pace. She will not go out of NATO. She will not go out of the European Union, but she will make sure that it's more in the interest of France, that it's more in the interest of Europeans, and it's more in the interest, by the way, to Ukraine. That means that there is a sort of, and which of course I'm adding this again, is very awkward because she seemed to be less Trumpist than any of the European political, well, at least now Giorgia Meloni is less Trumpist as well.
Right.
And this is quite a change because a few months ago that was not the case.
I'll have to jump in, unfortunately. I mean, there's so many more things we need to discuss. But look, thanks for giving us the latest there. From France, Emmanuel Dupuy, pleasure having you. Thanks. And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.